What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Eastern Current. We've got a great guest on tonight, and we're talking about something that I'm very passionate about, and I get a lot of requests about this topic. But before we get into that, I want to just share with y'all, if you do love our podcast and you want to help support financially, as well as have some extra content and some early access to content, please go check out our Patreon account. It will be linked in the YouTube description and the show notes on any of the podcast platforms. Also go check out Eastern Current Fishing. It's a Facebook group for our listeners. It's just a great way to connect with everybody. Kind of download there on Facebook. It just makes it easy for everybody to be a community together. So we are bringing on today my good friend Joe, and he is going to talk to us a lot about kind of the issues that our state's fishery is facing. And I just think I have so many people email me and ask, because I am very vocal about what I think are some issues that we have here in our state, and other than trying to get the word out there, I don't always have the best places to point people as far as, hey, this is something you can tangibly do right now. But Joe's going to share with us kind of ways that we can all help financially and just be a voice for our fishery, which doesn't have a voice for itself. So I'm going to stop rambling here and bring on our good friend. I forgot to set this scene. Let me make sure it works. Joe, what's going on, man?
Hey, Jud, how you doing today?
Doing good. Good. I told Joe we would record this at 1 o'clock, and I totally slipped on it with the new baby. Things are crazy. And here we are recording it at 9 o'clock tonight. So we had to get this one in here, though, and we're excited to do it. So have you had a good day?
Good day, hot day. It's been hot here in Eastern North Carolina for sure. I mean, hot. Yeah.
It was hot here too. We were kind of hunkered down. It was my sister-in-law's birthday, and so we were kind of celebrating that today. And we stayed out of the heat for the most part. But it seems like you got quite a few fish back there. Some big speckled trout. How big is that speckled trout on the wall for those people that can't see it?
Yeah, he was just shy of 8 pounds. My largest to date. Yeah.
What did he eat?
Nice fish. Actually a 17 mirror.
Awesome.
And on December the 16th, it was a cold 32-degree day, and just one of those days. Just things happen right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's it seems like it's those weird, funky days where you really don't want to be fishing. Not funky days, but just kind of nasty weather when you catch those big trout. And then you start talking to other people that were out trout fishing that day, and everyone kind of like, not everyone, but those are the days those fish get caught, it seems like.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it was ice on the water that morning. You wouldn't have really guessed it, but you just never know sometimes.
Right, you never know.
You have to be out there throwing the baits. Exactly.
Well, cool. Well, let's hear a little bit of your backstory. And I know we talked pre-show about we're going to do another podcast or two together. But I want, before we kind of jump into the backstory of our fishery and the issues that we're facing today, I think it's important that people know who you are and So I'll just share a little bit of your story and how it's brought you to where you are now.
Yeah, well, thank you, and appreciate you having me this evening. But I've made my career in the outdoors, and I'll take you back to the late 70s, mid 70s, when I started outdoor writing and still photography. That's where I really started, writing mainly for local papers that were being published at the time, mainly about Eastern North Carolina fishing and hunting, and pretty much grew from there. I became good friends with Frank White, who started the Southern Sportsman outdoor television series. It ran for 22 seasons. He had a really good run, and toward it was the late 70s into the 80s, early 80s, over about 6 years. I did a lot of the filming for him, mainly in Eastern North Carolina, a little bit in South Carolina, and really got my experience in what I call moving pictures. Up to then, I was shooting stills, 35 millimeter. And from there, over that period of time, just kind of picked up the trade, moved on from there, and started a video production company, which started in the late 80s. And over a period of 3 years, I lived in Charlotte at the time. We traveled around the world, shot 19 videos, exotic places like Africa, 2 safaris, Alaska trips. We went up to Alaska 8 times. Been on an offshoot of Amazon River for peacock bass.
Wow.
and then just a good variety of things over those 3 years. In 1990, moved back to Greenville and started the production company that I currently have still today. 1993, we started Carolina Outdoor Journal, and had a really great 24-season run of that, which brought us up to, 3 years ago. The show's still airing and will be continuing to air on UNC TV in perpetuity. Just signed a contract with them a year ago to they'll be continuing to air our high-definition shows that we started 16 years ago, and we're really excited about that. So they won't disappear.
Nice.
So it's just been because I get asked quite often, how do you get into it? How'd you get into it? But for me, it was a career. I mean, it was a stepping stone all the way up, and had some great opportunities to see outdoors around the world, and particularly here in North Carolina. Over those 24 seasons, over 400 shows just here in North Carolina. So that just shows you the variety of opportunities we have here in North Carolina.
Yeah.
The first 10 years we actually covered hunting, and then when we switched to high definition, I just opted to go strictly fishing because I wanted to capture as much fishing as I could. Because at that point in time, I didn't know how much longer we'd be on the air. But UNC TV has been a great partner to work with, and continues to air the show, and lots of people have enjoyed it. So we've been very lucky.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have a lot of clients that ask about that show and ask if I've seen that show. And I'm like, of course, it's like a staple of the outdoorsman here in North Carolina. So it's cool that they're going to be continued on through this new platform, and it's awesome that UNC TV has carried them for so long. But yeah, that's awesome. Well, let's go into and kind of take that as a segue into, you know, some of the issues that we have here as a fishery. I think we should just jump right into it, and kind of tell us about this group that y'all started, and kind of the vision and the goal for that.
Yeah, the group you're speaking of is the North Carolina Coastal Fishery Reform Group, NCC FRG. We started in 2009, August 2009. It was a group of recreational fishermen and guides who got together and said, you know, we've got to step in and make our voices heard. We're losing this fishery. We literally, if we're not careful, we're going to lose it. And at that point in time, we'd already lost some of it. And so, you know, my involvement dates back prior to that, back in the mid 90s, late 90s, issues on the Albemarle Sound with striped bass. And but in 2009, we banded together and started getting involved. And the first thing we did was to put up the possibility of a game fish bill that would incorporate red drum and speckled trout. And quickly going through this, we made the attempt through the Marine Fisheries Commission at the time. This was 2009, and we're told that they could not do anything about that we had to go through the legislature. So we, the following year, it took us 6 or 8 months to put a bill together and then find support in the legislature. And when you do a bill like that, you have to have several members of the legislature get behind you. And we had that going in, but it didn't last very long. As soon as the word got out on the street what we were trying to do, it never made it out of committee. It never was heard. And so that took a whole year of effort for naught. We didn't get anywhere with it. So,
right.
So the following year, we handed it over to the CCA, and for the next 2 or 3 years, they made the same attempt. They went to the legislature, just like we were. That's the only way we could do it. And they spent a lot of time and money and energy trying to get it through the legislature, and to no avail. And so subsequently, up until now, there's been many efforts of change to try to establish some change that would benefit the resource. This all kind of it started back in the late 80s, in the early 80s, and precipitated through the 80s. And then, but in 1997, there was an attempt made, or not an attempt, there was a law passed actually. And it was written with good intentions to start with. But I won't call any names, but there was a powerful senator at the time that the only way he would allow it to pass was he had to go in and change some things. And I could sit here for hours and tell you to what extent it was changed, but suffice it to say that the term status quo became really popular moving forward. The bill was designed to keep everything just as it was then, and here we are 23 years later, and it's served its purpose. Nothing's changed, with a few things here and there, but ultimately the things that needed to be changed, mainly certain gears used commercially, and we can talk about the recreational side of it too, but things that needed to be changed and changed quickly. That bill was never designed for that. You had everything of major importance would have to go through the legislature. And hey, as you can, if you go to our website, it's the chart we did that we made up, shows from 1999 to present day the attempts that were made by groups and individuals to initiate some change in certain areas of the fishery, and it just it's never happened. So here we are on the verge of filing a federal lawsuit because of that, but more importantly, since November of 2019, we have had nobody within state government willing to sit down and even talk to us. Now, we started in November with our website putting it up, and in January formally sent in a request to meet both with the governor and with the Division of Environmental Quality, DEQ, which the Division of Marine Fisheries is under that. We simply we're asking for a meeting to sit down and discuss the issues. And to date, we have had no conversation with anybody. And so we didn't have any choice. We're on the doorsteps of a federal court lawsuit that's within 2 weeks, and still haven't heard a word so far.
Yeah, that's frustrating. What do you think is the reason overall that we just haven't been able to see change in our state? If that's a question you're comfortable answering. Like, there's been all these attempts and there's been all these issues, and obviously we have some serious, depletion of stock and resources here in North Carolina. Why do you think it's taken us so long to jump on the, let's call it the bandwagon? Because so many other states have decided to, ban, certain things we're talking about and push restrictions. But why are we behind?
Right. Well, again, I'm so close to this federal lawsuit that I'm really not comfortable. Laying it out at this point.
No, that's fine.
We'll have time to come back and get more into it. But suffice it to say, the 97 law, that's kind of the crutch everybody falls back on. Here's this law that was signed by Governor Jim Hunt, that was going to fix everything, and in contrast, it made things worse. Yeah, I mean that's literally what came of that. And so, my take on the legislature, you've got 175 members of that legislature, that most of them couldn't tell you the difference between a gray trout and a speckled trout, and how they're expected to make decisions on fisheries laws. See, that needs to change. That law needs to be completely abolished or rewritten to the extent that it puts the resource first. Now, I've always been that way. I'm a recreational fisherman by definition, but my track record in the past, whether it has to do with ducks or a river system or anything, I'm gonna put the resource first. I'm not anti-development. I'm not anti-commercial fishing. In fact, I got friends that commercial fish. I've got friends that have had to leave the industry because they can't make a living at it anymore. So that's not it at all, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to be able to tell people this, because it's the truth. Yeah. Unless we take care of the resource is not going to take care of us. Period. Yeah. Whether you're a recreational fisherman or a commercial fisherman. And so what we're hitting at first is a piece of commercial gear that should never have been allowed to come within the barrier islands of our sounds. Should never. And these are these big industrial size ocean going, designed for the ocean, shrimp trawlers. They have done more to set this state back, not only for the recreational community, but I'd say more importantly for the commercial industry. When you look at what's done to certain species of fish, and we can get into those in a few minutes, but that's it in a nutshell. We need to revamp the system and let professionals make the decisions on how to manage our fisheries. It shouldn't be a political decision, right? And a lot of that's had to do with politics. bar none.
For sure. Let's talk a little bit about, if you can lay out for people, because I know a lot of hardcore anglers and guides and whatnot could put their finger on each one of the issues that maybe we could say our state has, but share with people that are listening kind of some of the main issues that we're dealing with here in North Carolina and some of the main fish that are struggling from some of our some of the things going on.
Okay. Well, let's just start with what this lawsuit coming up is all about. Yep. And it's about the big boats, what I just mentioned. Back when I was in my teens, back in the early 70s through the 70s, I enjoyed going out in Pamlico Sound and catching gray trout. They were everywhere, all sizes too. I mean, there were areas in Pamlico Sound, certain times of the year, you could catch 6 to 8 pound gray trout.
Wow.
Unbelievable. Lots of gray trout, lots of croaker. Anybody that's ever fished for croaker that are, pound and a half, pound and 3/4 will tell you they'll fight almost as good, maybe in some cases a little bit better than a red drum. They were everywhere. Spot were everywhere. So they were the big three of the Pamlico Sound. Okay, that's what they were known as. Not only were they a recreational sought after fish, but they were commercially sought after fish because those three fish made up the base of your restaurant fare. When you went into a restaurant in Morehead City, Ocracoke, seafood restaurants, Inland, Kinston, Goldsboro, they used to have these fish houses people used to go to, and you could go in and get a plate of seafood really, really reasonable. Well, croaker, spot, and gray trout made up the majority of those species that were available because they were reasonably priced. You could go out in the commercial industry, they were netted out in the sound, and they caught enough of them. So that was until the introduction of these big boats. And ever since the big boats went in, since then it's been a gradual decline. And it's appalling when you look at the catch levels, say from 1981 to present on the big three, on this croaker, spot, and gray trout. It's just unbelievable where we are now. I think it was like 37 million pounds back in 81, and it drops. I think in 2015 it was 2.5 million of the those three together. I mean, a tremendous amount of loss. Subsequently, here in the last few years, we've noticed a decline in our annual fall spot runs to almost non-existence. They just don't. All the piers used to have thousands, tens of thousands that run the coast in the fall. That's almost disappeared. Gray trout, for sure, have disappeared. And they had some issues offshore in the commercial fishery too that lended to that problem too. But when you're killing the young of the year, the 2 and 3 inch juvenile fish like we've been killing, what do you expect? And it really has finally caught up with us. So those three are the signature, or the three that are in the scope right now on this lawsuit.
Yeah.
Okay. Because of the volume of bycatch levels that these big boats do. And I can't go into the details of the lawsuit, but we feel really good about it. So it's the big boats, okay, so that's where we are with that right now. And then you go and look at speckled trout back in the 70s. Speckled trout, red drum, other than the big red drum that used to hit the beaches, and they still do at Hatteras and Ocracoke and Portsmouth Island. Other than the big drum, the smaller drum have gone up and down through the years because they've been targeted commercially and with gear. And then striped bass, and then that striped bass has its own history. Right now, the only place that you can legally catch, and I think the seasons are closed right now, on the Roanoke system, the Albemarle Sound. Seasonal openings for that group of striped bass. The other three major rivers are closed.
Yeah. So
you just look at the stock status reports, and they're listed on the Division of Marine Fisheries website. That tells you everything. I mean, it's really sad, is what it is. And to not have anybody in government willing to sit down and talk to you about it, that's really the sad part about it. So, that's forced us to do what we have had to do for the last eight or 9 months, is get ready for this.
Yeah.
So
it is a very frustrating, thing, because it really is people that just care about the resource and just want it to be something that's around for the future and for our kids and future generations. And a point that was shared with me that I've kind of taken the mindset of is if we can't, if your everyday person can't go down and catch a redfish or a trout or a flounder to bring home and have for dinner with their son, I just think we should be managing for that person first, really, is my opinion. Just the everyday taxpayer that wants to go down to the beach and go catch a redfish or go catch a spot or go catch a gray trout. And it's just, you got to be pretty dialed in now to go catch those fish. It's not.
Well, you do, and I understand. Yeah, your clientele. I think you really have a lot of sport fishermen that they fish with you, right? I mean, they go for red drum, they go for speckled trout, go for striped bass. But the average fisherman that likes to go down with shrimp, bottom rig, there's absolutely nothing wrong with a croaker or a spot. I mean, a lot of people that would rather eat a spot than they would a speckled trout or a red drum.
Yeah.
That's the part of the fishery. See, the way I look at it too, when you have your whole fishery healthy, then you spread everybody out. Right now, if the speckled trout, if we hadn't had a history-making run of speckled trout, spotted sea trout in this past fall, winter season, what else would you have been catching? You can't keep striped bass now. You can only keep one red drum. Croaker, spot, and gray trout are as far as catching and taking them home to eat, are almost non-existent.
Right.
Flounder, which happens to be probably the most popular fish of them all, now we're closed until August.
Yeah.
The commercials can't even fish till September. That's exactly what really has driven this lawsuit. Back in September, I woke up one morning and I said, okay, that's it. When they took flounder off the list for commercial fishermen and for the recreational fishermen, I said, that's it. That is it. We have got to do something right now, or we're losing everything. And that's really what's brought our group first and foremost into this front and center, is that we've had enough. This is it. If we have to shut the whole fishery down until we get it right, we'll shut it down.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think that I'm not against shutting something down if we feel like it's going to help out, for sure. It's the resource can't speak for itself. Us as anglers and concerned anglers, and anglers that are focused on conservation and preservation of the fishery. We need to be the voice of our fishery here and of our resource. Tell me this, because this is something I'm unsure of. The trawlers and the ocean-going trawlers that are in off the beach, they're targeting shrimp, but I know that the bycatch is very bad with those trawling boats, or with the trawlers. Are they keeping gray trout and all that stuff too? Are they targeting that, or it's like small baby fish bycatch that's just being killed?
It's all shrimp. That's the target species.
Okay.
Unfortunately, because of the size of the gear that they're using. Now, let's jump back to the Pamlico Sound real quick, and then we'll jump into the ocean.
Yeah.
The Pamlico Sound is very shallow, as most people know. Probably the deepest water. There's some holes that are 20, 25 feet in some places, but for the most part, the average is about 15 to 18, somewhere in there, across the whole body of it, till you get to the edges, and then it really shallows up. So there's only certain areas that they can trawl in. Unfortunately, the places they like to trawl in happen to be the nursery areas for gray trout, croaker, and spot. It's the deeper water areas of the Sound. Well, when these industrial size boats come in, they can pull 4 55-foot nets. They're called 4-bangers. They're 4 55-foot nets, which add up to 220 feet, which is legal in North Carolina right now. Now, you can't go anywhere else in the country in inshore waters and do that. Nobody else allows that. Louisiana, in their inshore waters, allows 50-foot nets, and then they have, right near their barrier islands, they go to 110, which would be 255s. So, all right, so inshore right now we allow, each boat can pull 4 nets. So you bring in boats from all up and down the East Coast and from the Gulf Coast. We have boats in here from Louisiana, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina. They're allowed to come in within our barrier islands and pull these four nets. Over a period of time, and some of them actually run 4 and 5 abreast. That's 4 or 5 boats side by side, pulling all these nets. It's amazing to me that there's anything left out there, period. I think some of that has to do with the fact that we do have some areas that they can't pull in, so there is some relaxation of the impacts on the fish, but their bycatch levels are just, and we've got the numbers. I mean, the numbers are astounding. We're not talking over the last 10 years. We're not talking millions. We're talking about billions of little 2 to 3, 4-inch gray trout, spot croaker. These are juvenile fish. They spend time in our inland waters. When they get to a certain size, they exit the inlets into deeper water where they spend a certain amount of time, and then they'll eventually work their way back into the inshore waters, near the beaches, along the piers, in the inlets. The one thing that most people don't realize too, that shrimp that grow up in our inshore waters all leave and go in the ocean. They can be caught in the ocean. They're larger, and they bring a better price in the market for the commercial fishermen. The reason they like to hit them in the Pamlico Sound is it's a fairly, most of the time. I mean, it can get real rough, as anybody that's been out there knows. But those big boats can generally handle that, and they go out on Sunday evenings and they shrimp the whole time until Friday to come back in. They don't shrimp on weekends, and they bring their catch in. So they're out just like the boats people are familiar with, the Deadliest Catch. Those boats go out until they get their quota, and they'll stay out for whatever length of time they need to catch their quota, and they come in. In our Pamlico Sound, the boats go out. They'll spend 5 nights, day and night, nonstop, pulling. And the bycatch at times, and it changes year to year, depending on the production of Mother Nature on these species of fish. And those 3 are the main targets. They're not targets, but they're not targeted. They just happen to be caught in the nets.
They're the main culprits
They're the bulk of it. But they're catching 100 species of marine life annually are impacted. 100 species of marine life are impacted. The reason I know this is I served on the AC committee, the advisory committee, for a year, 3 years ago, trying to find common ground to reduce the head rope size. That's the size of your nets that they're allowed to pull. We were trying to find common ground that we could live with, and there were 5 commercially oriented individuals, 4 of us recreational / resource oriented individuals, 5-4 vote. At the end of the year, we put up some recommendations, and they were not voted on, and I don't even think they were voted on. And what came out of that year-long period of time was to study the gear and see if the gear could be made. Well, the problem with gear, and I don't care how many turtle excluders or fish escape panels are in these nets, when you're targeting a shrimp that's that size, okay, and your juvenile fish are that size, some are going to escape.
Right.
The bulk of them are going to go back into the tail bag and drown. These little fish are not strong enough to get out.
Yeah.
A bigger fish could probably work his way out. The little fish, no, they don't. And you can go to our website, and I hope you'll share the website with your guests.
Definitely. And it's listed here. If you're viewing, you can see it here. It's nccfrg.org.
Good. Well, the website's got all the data, got all the numbers, and the bycatch numbers come from our own Division of Marine Fishery studies that they've done. We didn't make these up. These are real numbers that have been extrapolated from the studies that have been done. And I can't believe we're standing here talking about it now, that we've gone this long to allow this.
Yeah.
But here we are.
Yeah, it's about time that we band together and do something about it. So yeah. I'm glad we are. Well, let's talk a little bit about what some of these other states have done as far as putting restrictions on gill nets and trawling, and how has that kind of been a success for these states that have done it before North Carolina has?
Well, yeah, primarily what we're talking about right now are the trawling regs. And for the most part, most trawling in the coastal states from North Carolina south around to the Gulf states is strictly in the ocean. The only exception would be Louisiana. And the way they're made up, their coastline's made up. They have their bigger boats are allowed off the beaches, and then inshore, some of their barrier islands, they allow a little larger net, and then inside that would replicate pretty much what we have here in North Carolina. It's limited to a 50-foot head rope size. So okay. We are the most liberal state in the union in this country to allow inshore trawling.
Wow. Have we seen a big bounce back pretty quickly in those, Louisiana and Florida and some of these other states when they put these restrictions on the trawlers? Was it a pretty quick comeback for some of those species?
Yeah, I mean, I think Louisiana really is a testament into what we could have here. Yeah. If we just manage what we allow to be used in our inshore waters. That's really our argument here, is that the gear that we've allowed for the better part of 40 years has just been too large for the habitat that we've allowed it to be used in, pretty much.
Well, how quickly do you think we could see a bounce back in our spot and our croaker and our gray trout? If this were to play out for us the way we wanted it to, is it like a 15-year or is it like a 5-10 year? What do you see being the bounce back time period?
Yeah, great question. And I did ask that question to our former director of marine fisheries a number of years ago. I asked him, I said, and this was a question, if we were to just shut it down completely for 5 years, would it take that long to see a comeback from Mother Nature, from the fisheries? And he said, absolutely not. He said, no, number one, you wouldn't have to shut it down. You would just have to manage the gear like we're trying to get done now appropriately. And within 3 years, you would see that's how fast that's how resilient. Now, this conversation was probably 10 or 12 years ago. Okay. And so how much we've deteriorated the stocks, we don't know yet. But as we've seen with the speckled trout, spotted sea trout populations, every time we have a cold stun event, the year afterwards, you see tens of thousands of small fish. She has a way of coming back if you let her, and we just haven't allowed that to happen in the last better part of 23 years. We just haven't. Yeah,
that's what I've heard from so many sources, and it's crazy. Like you look at the salmon in Alaska, and you can take, what is it, over 50% of the fish that come back in the river, at least for sockeyes. I think that's right, or 50%, and it'll repopulate at still a higher number or something like that.
All right. It's just as if that Mother Nature knows when populations get down what needs to happen.
Right.
And I understand cycles of fish to a certain extent. Certain fish do go through cycles. But as I said earlier in our conversation, that's fine if you believe in cycles, but you just can't keep hammering the populations when they're down.
Right.
There's got to be some breathing room to come back. And along with the gear that we're talking about controlling, the management setup in the state needs to change. We need to consolidate the two agencies and have especially the biological decisions made under one roof, not under two separate roofs. And we've seen that it just doesn't work with a species that leave salt water and go into fresh water. And we can sit here and talk for days about that. And that may be another blog at some point about that.
Right. So tell me this, is the idea kind of that we need to be taking less fish? Let me figure out how I want to word this. So the number of fish that we should be taking out of the water is at a rate to where we're taking, I can't word this correctly, but so we want to be leaving, let's say we need to leave 45% of the fish in the water, or we need to if we take out 45% of the fish, we have a growing number. So every year it's getting larger and larger, our population of speckled trout, gray trout, croaker and spot. Is that kind of the idea you want to be taking? I don't know why I'm struggling saying this. Do you understand what I'm saying, though?
Yeah, I do, and
Okay.
I think I can answer the question.
Okay.
I think the answer to it is what you do, and I've advocated this for the last 30 years, is you and I may have mentioned it earlier, you put the resource on a pedestal, and you determine what levels, because the biologists are out all the time taking the sampling, so they can stay up pretty close to what's going on, if given the opportunity to do it, the funding to do it, and then all this would come under a consolidation that would work everything that we've got in place to the best benefit of the resource. But you establish what levels you're going to allow these populations to stay at, and then if you dip below it, which we often do, and we'll just use the speckled trout for example, unlike any other fish, the spotted sea trout is susceptible to the cold stuns, and about the cold stuns,
right.
And we literally lose, who knows, tens of thousands of them when we have a real severe winter in these creeks. And I shot some video a number of years ago showing what a cold stun, because I'd never seen one, was like in Campbell Creek, and it's still up on YouTube. And to see these perfectly healthy fish dying right there because they just were caught back in these creeks when they froze up, and over a period of time, they don't necessarily die. If it warms up quickly, a lot of times they'll come back, but that's again another story too. But when you have natural events like that happen, then you have to be able to step in immediately. And we've got a mechanism in place now that four coastal counties, if they report cold stuns, the director will step in and close the season like we did several years ago. So I think the biologists establish these levels that these populations can need to be at. And then if we dip below them, then you close them. You close them for everybody. You don't
right.
close them just for the wrecks, and you don't close them just for the commercials. So it's a team effort is what I'm looking at moving forward with. It's a team effort, partners on the resource. We all get a chance to partake in the resource only if the numbers say we can do it, bottom line.
Gotcha.
And that's what the biologists are there to do. I mean, we've got really good biologists in the state who have the ability to go out sampling the shock boats that people have seen out in these creeks, net surveys. They can set nets, and they can determine it pretty close to where we need to be.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes good sense. And so it's, I guess what I was saying is the amount of fish we should be taking out of the water should be less, or should be at an amount where the population of fish overall is still growing, and not at a decline. It's sustainable. Yeah. So
a good example of the striped bass, and one of the biologists for the Wildlife Commission told me this years ago. A healthy class of fish has got 6 to 7 years of age classes within it. 6 to 7
Wow.
age classes within it. So what that tells you, when these fish go into spawn, you have a production mechanism within that population of fish that can keep your population going. So 6 or 7 years, that's a striped bass. I'm sure that, I would love to think that at some point we could have 6 or 7 years of spotted sea trout populations out there. That's when you start seeing the gator trout, that we've seen here recently. There are quite a few big trout in the fishery right now.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking in croaker and spot, probably not as many years. It depends on the lifespan of the fish too. That's critical too. Some fish like dolphin, we know dolphin, they don't live long. They're short livers, grow fast, and they live 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, dolphin being mahi, right?
Mahi, yeah, correct. So each fish is going to be different. Again, I'm not a biologist, but
right.
I've been around it long enough and talked to enough of them to know a little bit about it. And but the bottom line is we all want a healthy fishery for everybody. That's my bottom line, and we got to do what we got to do to achieve that.
Yeah, definitely. I think a good way to kind of wrap this up is to answer the question that so many rec anglers ask. They're confused. One, so let's go with this first. They're confused on where they can find information. So your website being a great place for information, but if people want to know where their voice can be heard and what they can do you have an answer for that or some good points of direction?
Well, yeah, right now in the situation we're in right now with our group and what we've done over the last 7 or 8 months, our website, which I think you've got listed right now, is a great vehicle to go and read through. It's easy to understand. We took 2 months to build it. It lists what we feel like needs to be addressed, and that's what we've been asking the governor's office and DEQ, that we wanted to just sit down and put it on the table. Okay, this is the time to do it. We're not going to study. We don't need to study anything. We know what we need to do. Okay, studies. One thing that the 1997 law did was push things down the road, kick the can down the road, if you will. That doesn't work anymore. We live in a world now that things happen quickly. We need to be able to respond quickly to situations, which that law does not allow it to do. And we need to get fisheries decisions out of Raleigh, out of the legislature, not Raleigh. Raleigh needs to be the base for home base. Wildlife Commission needs to be the home base. But as to what people can do right now, go to our website, read it, understand it. When we put out things, I don't see a lot of participation in hearings and things like that right now, because really, at the end of the day, we want the consolidation to be addressed, and that's getting ready to be addressed. That's got to happen. The efficiency that comes along with consolidation, both in the biological end of it, the management end of it, the savings to the state economically, enforcement, which enforcement is very necessary, not only in the recreational, the commercial industry, but also the recreational industry. We need to have the game wardens out there policing the rules. You know, if you can't go fishing and live by the rules, you don't have any business fishing in North Carolina.
Right.
That's my feeling. Okay.
Agreed.
The resource belongs to everybody. All right. So with that said, right now, if we go into court, it looks like we are, we're going to need some financial support. And so on our website, there's a button at the top that you can contribute. It can be $25. It can be whatever you feel like you can do financially. And right now it's tough. It's tough for everybody. We understand that. So whatever you can give, the resource belongs to you. So
right.
Be a part. That's one way you can be a part of this, because if the state doesn't want to talk to us, there are ways that we can have things heard and our concerns addressed. I think the states are eventually going to talk to us. There's no question that
right.
They have to. I mean, we're not going away. We represent literally thousands of anglers across the state of North Carolina who, just like yourself, are concerned with the health of this fishery, and we just need to do something about it.
We do. We really do. It's become the point of no return. If we don't do something about it now, we're never going to be able to do something about it. So.
Yeah. There's no question.
And so that website, for people that are listening to the podcast and not watching, it's listed here if you're viewing the YouTube video on this lower third here with Joe's name on it. It's NCCFRG.org. So definitely go check that out. And like I said earlier in this podcast, I'll link that in the podcast show notes as well as in the YouTube description. And you can hop on there. Hit me up on Instagram or Facebook if you have any other questions on how to get in contact with this organization, and if you want to, see if there's other ways that you can help out even more financially or anything like that. So, is there anything else that you feel like we missed that you want to share?
No, I think right now we're a week out.
Okay.
From where our 60-day notice, our letters of intent gives you 60 days to try to get together and talk this out, and we're just about the end of that. And we plan to file the lawsuit as soon as those 60 days are over with. The other exception would be if we could sit down and talk and see and make some meaningful movement in the right direction.
Yeah.
And if you go on our website, you'll see the other things that we want to address. It includes some more gear, commercial gear, and also some other things. We won't go into detail here, but the website is, like I said, it's really easy to navigate.
Yeah.
And it's if you're really interested in this situation, or if you're just now hearing about it, you can get up to date real quick. We put the facts up there for you about just how what we're dealing with, and this is not something that just cropped up since November. This has been going on for 30 years. Yeah. And so I think earlier we pretty much covered the 97 law and how it's basically taking us backward and not forward. And it's a shame, because if we had seen the results that some of the ones that drafted that originally before it was edited down, if those had been in place, we would be a whole lot better off right now than we are. I personally think we can fix it, but we just need to fix it now. I mean, it needs to happen, starting in the next several months and moving forward. It's going to take, the consolidation, from what I understand, will take a couple of years. So that's, in the spring, we need to really be on the legislature to look in that direction.
Yeah,
for sure.
Definitely. Well, Joe, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and guys, thanks for listening. We're definitely going to be having Joe back on to talk more about, the updates of what's going on, how we can continually help, and even if it's just a little bit of money as a donation, you guys. It's, if you care about our fishery here in North Carolina, or if you're in another state and you feel bad for us, go ahead and please help. Please help with this. It's definitely something that is. I want my son and my future kids to be able to get out in the water and catch these fish, and I want their kids to be able to do it. And I don't want today to be the good old days. I want tomorrow to be the good old days. So absolutely. I don't think we have to just constantly be in a decline. I think we could be on an incline, and that's what I want to see. And I thank you so much, Joe, for being someone on the forefront of this, just pushing for conservation in our state. So
absolutely, and thanks for having me on today, and look forward to seeing you again real soon.
Yeah, definitely. We'll if you're in Wilmington sometime soon, let me know, and we'll get together and chat. And guys, thank y'all so much for checking out this podcast. This one is not a fishing tips and tackle and tactics one, but this is more important than that. You won't have to be as dialed in on your tackle and your tips and your tactics if we can get our fish stocks up. So thank you so much, Joe. And as always, thank y'all for listening and watching, and we will see y'all in the next Eastern Current fishing video. Later.